All right. Wow. It was your name. That was some good stuff over there. I mean, look, man, it's time to move back into the NBA. We talked about the Bradley Beal trade that eventually happened after that take right there. And we had a lot to say about that. Now we're going to move back into the NBA. Which trade, speaking of trades, must happen before or during the 2023 NBA draft? And Zach, once again, the mic is yours.
Yeah, Lil. So it's interesting. I remember a few weeks ago we did a segment, the two of us and Zay, talking about Damian Lillard, the Portland Trailblazers, what the future really held there with those two parties. And my opinion at the time was, if I was Portland, I would trade Dame because they're literally, I couldn't think of a deal that they could make that could make them even relatively close to a Western Conference contender at the time. I didn't see a deal that they could make. So I said, if I was Portland, I would trade Dame. But a couple weeks have passed, and my opinion has changed a little bit. And the trade I want to see happen, of course, is Zion Williamson getting dealt to Portland for the number 3 pick. And I think this is a deal that works for both sides. First of all, let's talk about Zion, because it's very unfortunate how this has all went down. I'm a big Zion fan. He is probably the best, most dominant college basketball player I've ever seen in my years watching the sport. And I think it's important to remember, right? Obviously, Zion has his flaws. He has his concerns. This would be a huge, huge risk for the Portland Trailblazers to make this deal, taking on his contract. And we'll see what the Charlotte Hornets, or if they trade the pick, but like, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with the number 2 pick, whether they take Brandon Miller from Alabama or Scoot Henderson. And the thing is, if I'm the Portland Trailblazers, right, and if I'm going to keep Damian Lillard, and all signs point to, as of right now, they don't really have any interest in trading him at the moment, and Dame doesn't have any interest in leaving Portland at the moment. So it's looking like Dame is going to be a Blazer to start off next season. And if I'm the Portland Trailblazers, like, my only way to win anything is, I don't think you could use that number 3 pick. Like, I understand they have some good young assets like Shaedon Sharpe and Anthony Simons, and if they don't want to include them in the deal, that's fine with me. But I'm curious. We're hearing all these reports, like the Pelicans, they want to trade and get that number 3 pick from the Blazers. The question is, who does Portland want? Do they want Zion, or do they want Brandon Ingram? That's what it's going to come down to. And if I was the Portland Trailblazers, I would want Zion, and I understand it's risky, but I think it's important for us to remember, when Zion came into the league, he was 20 years old at the time. He averaged 22.5 points per game, 6.3 rebounds per game, 2 assists per game on a pretty efficient 58.3% from the field. He also shot 42% from 3. Now, he's not that good of a shooter. Those numbers have obviously decreased. And the knock on Zion, and of course it's true, like, he has had trouble staying on the basketball court. But when he played for Portland, or for New Orleans this past season, they were the number 1 seed in the Western Conference until he got hurt. Like, they were playing some really good basketball. And in my opinion, if you're the Portland Trailblazers, and if you ask yourself, how do we even come close to winning a championship with Dame Lillard in Portland? I think this is the only move they could make. Like, I like Brandon Ingram a lot. I think he's a solid, really productive player that could be maybe a really good third, maybe a solid second option on a championship team. But I think we forget just how high Zion Williamson's ceiling is. Like, this guy was the number 1 pick in the draft for a reason. This guy dominated college basketball, and for the last 3 years when he's been on the court, he's averaged over 20 points per game, and he hasn't even hit his prime yet. I understand the injuries are a concern, but sometimes these are the risks you have to take if you want to come close to winning a championship. So this is the deal I want to make. I'm curious if if New Orleans was actually serious. Like, do they actually want the number 3 pick to draft either Brandon Miller or Scoot, or were they just leaking that report as a message to Zion, like, bro, you better get your act together, or else you're not going to be here for much longer?
Yeah, I would agree. That's the exact trade that I have in my mind. Portland trading for Zion Williamson. Now, I just hope in Portland they don't have no White Castles over there, because you don't want this cat sneaking out there at midnight with the shades on and the hoodie on, wearing all black, to try to sneak at White Castle like he Harold and Kumar, okay, at midnight to eat 50 hamburgers, okay? I mean, it's gotten to that point that I have to make jokes about the situation, because this situation went from concerning to laughable, okay? And everything that's going on with Zion right now, and I mean everything, okay? I mean everything It's very laughable right now. It's very, very laughable. And you just hope that you get one of these top 3 picks in that 2019 draft to come along. Which one of y'all 3 cats gonna get y'all act together? In RJ Barrett, I have more faith in him because he's not perfect. He's not a star yet, and he's supposed to be, but he's not. But I think he will probably be the one to get his act together before all these cats. So, commend
Actually
him.
plays basketball.
He actually exactly. He actually shoots. No pun intended. Okay, no pun intended. But the reason why I'm gonna go. Excuse me, right? Tongue tied there. The reason why I'm gonna go with the Portland Trailblazers, right? I'm gonna go with them over my personal fandom preference, right? Because from a fandom perspective, I do want to see him go to the Knicks. From a fan, not from a basketball perspective, from a fan, because I do want to see the Knicks make a move for a star. Just the fandom in me, right? I'm just talking about the fandom Lil. I do want to see the Knicks get into the action here and trade for somebody, of a caliber player of Carmelo Anthony. Like, we haven't made a trade like that since Carmelo Anthony, right? So Jalen Brunson wasn't a trade. We signed him in free agency, and I think he's going to morph into that caliber player if he's not there already. But I want to see that type of high profile move. But right, when you think about the reasons why that shouldn't happen, there's a lot of reasons why that shouldn't happen. Number one, just like how some Knicks fans are dreaming of Zion still, and the connections that we had with that pick in the 2019 draft, and we wanted to land the number 1 pick to draft him, you can make the argument that the Pelicans want Zion as much as the Knicks do because they don't even got Zion on the floor, healthy. It's almost like that Christmas gift that your mom give you. And she say, you know what, you got to wait 2 years to open that joint. And you really wanted it. And you can't open it. You got to wait for 2 years. You got to wait for this cat to get his act together. Right? The rate stipulations in his contract, everything. Now, let's say hypothetically, Julius Randle goes back to New Orleans and, pairs along Brandon Ingram and you reunite, RJ Barrett and Zion Williamson. It doesn't solve any of the Knicks' major issues, which is the spacing on the floor. It actually makes it worse because now you're losing the guy in Randall who understand the need or the want to offload those type of contracts, the Evan Fourniers, the Julius Randle, but it hurts us more because we need spacing. The reason why we lost to Miami Heat and why we didn't go to the Eastern Conference Finals and ultimately didn't go to the finals was because we couldn't shoot the rock. We missed a lot of threes. Miami threw that zone at us. We wasn't able to adapt by making threes, and that was night. All she wrote. And Zion Williamson is not going to help that situation. In fact, when Julius Randle was knocking down threes, it was one stretch in, I believe, the month of March where we went on a streak and Julius Randle was knocking down threes. We beat the same team that sent us home, Miami. We beat Boston twice in that stretch, and we looked like a really, really dangerous team. That was when we was at our most dangerous peak because we was knocking down shots. IQ was knocking down shots. Zion Williamson doesn't help that. So that's where Portland makes sense for me because they have a superstar hanging to the fingertips on. They don't want to let him go. He's holding on to the hand. I don't want to let you go, Dame. And I think this move will keep Dame happy. And this move will get the Blazers back in playoff contention, right? Zion Williamson's interior game, along with Damian Lillard's exterior game together will complement each other because we know what Zion Williamson can do in the post. We know he could punish defenders. We know he's unguardable when he is not being guarded by food. Okay? We know he's unguardable on the floor. We know Dame can shoot from anywhere, right? Any range is Dame range. So imagine them together. That would be a move that would keep Dame smiling until Zion Williamson don't show up because he's, doing Zion Williamson things. But I say that to say, enough jokes to the side for a second. That would be a good move. It makes more sense than my Knicks move. If you're the Blazers, if there's anybody that needs to make a trade, if there's one team that needs to make a trade, right? And you could argue Miami. Hell, Miami just went to the finals. So if they didn't make a trade, I'm not saying they're gonna get back there next year, but they made it to the finals, so they got that experience, right? You can throw the Mavericks, right, with Luka Doncic, and they're trying to bring back Kyrie Irving, so I could go sign that. But Portland, number one, if they really want to keep Dame, it's Zion Williamson or bust. And I'm going to leave it there.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, like, the dynamic of Zion as a player, because I think this would be the one move that could really convince Portland, like, okay, if we just add Zion and he's on the floor at his best, like, I love CJ McCollum, but, like, Dame has never had a guy like Zion on his team, on his side, and I would love to see how that dynamic duo would do in a postseason. Dame, I think it's interesting, like, he's been good for a while now, but you could make the argument he's at the top of his game right now. Like, he's in the peak of his powers, in his prime. He had a great year this past year, and it just comes down to, can you get these guys on the floor? But I think if you're in a team like Portland's position, where you've already had Dame for such a long time and nothing has ever worked, this is a risk I would take. You do like them adding Zion over Ingram, though, right? We agree on that. Like, Zion's ceiling, even with the risk, would be better than adding a guy that you could really rely on like Ingram, but we don't know if the ceiling is there.
I think it works both ways. The Pelicans should want to keep Ingram, and the Blazers should want to trade for Zion. That's how I look at it, from like a fit perspective and from a availability perspective. Wait, Zach, before you give any other, teams or any other scenarios, I do want to add another scenario here, and I want to stay in Portland. Hypothetically, they don't get Zion Williamson, right? And this trade does not have to happen before the draft. It could happen after, but everything is a trickle-down effect. Let's say that Zion Williamson is not traded, and that's going to open up another can of worms because now he's in trade conversations. So you definitely going to have to trade him. And maybe the Knicks are a realistic possibility because we know he has an affection for playing at MSG, according to him, his second favorite place to play. So maybe that trade is more likely if he doesn't get traded tomorrow or 2 days from now. But I think if that doesn't happen, maybe Dame, I would like this. Listen, you cannot run this roster back with Damian Lillard, right? So my second option revolves around the Blazers again. If you can't get Zion Williamson, then you must trade Dame. Like you have to. I think the Bradley Beal trade that we talked about earlier, and I know I've been on the bracket of loyalty, right? Kendrick Lamar, right? But that right there, I don't know about that. It made me change my mind. So I think if you don't get Zion Williamson, you trade Dame to the Brooklyn Nets. I would like to see happen for Brooklyn. Now, you could say Miami, fine. I'll give you that. But I want to see him personally in Brooklyn because Brooklyn need a point guard. Okay, Spencer Dinwiddie is a shooting guard. He's not a point guard. Two feast and famine for me. You need a point guard over there. And there's no other player other than Zion Williamson that I would like to see Dame play with other than Mikal Bridges. We know they have a chemistry off the floor. I think that could grow into a great chemistry on the floor. I think him being a two-way star, being a number two at best, I think he's a number one now, but he could be a number two, more suited to be a number two. Mikal Bridges, you pair him along with Dame, and you keep Claxton away from Portland. This is a top 5 team in the Eastern Conference. And that's what you want. You want to give yourself a chance. You want to be like the Cavaliers, give yourself a chance to win a series. Now, unlike Mitchell, Dame could have a 40-point night and send any team home like he did with so many stars. So you're giving yourself a great chance to contend in the playoffs. I would like to see that. I think it's unrealistic, though, because I think the Blazers want Mikal Bridges. So you may have a tug of war and a petty war where I want Mikal Bridges because I'm trying to build around Dame. No, I want Dame so I can build around Mikal Bridges, and then maybe it cancels each other out because they're too petty. I don't know, but I would like to see that as my option number 2.
Yeah, the thing with Brooklyn is after the Durant trade, they do have a ton of picks and they have a ton of assets. Like, if you were to throw them all 3 first-round picks you got in the Phoenix trade, plus like Cam Thomas, I think that's a pretty solid return for Portland. But then also, what if Miami offers you a couple firsts and Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson? Like, both options are pretty intriguing. But I don't think the Blazers are trading Dame, at least not on draft night, or at least not before next year's trade deadline. I think they want him there. I think Dame wants to be there. And their move is going to be to bring someone else. But yeah, Dame to Brooklyn, that would definitely be interesting. I'd be curious if Brooklyn would want to do that after getting all they got back from Phoenix for the Durant trade. Would they want to go right back at it, trade all their assets again for a guy like Dame? I'm curious how Joe Tsai and Sean Marks would react to that. But yeah, I definitely think that's a possibility. After the Beal trade, though, it is interesting. Miami missed on Beal. Are they going to go all out and offer even more? Like Caleb Martin, Nikola Jovic, their young 19-year-old that they really like. They have picks too. Are they going to go all out for Dame? Because I think Miami, they want to make a move after falling short in the finals the last few years. But then you could also say they didn't have Tyler Hero, and that could be the move they make. So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes down. I think we're going to have a big prediction of mine, though, and I've said this before going into many drafts, but I'll say it again. I think we're going to have a big deal go down on Thursday night, and I think there's a good chance Zion Williamson and the Blazers could be involved.
Listen, man, that will send the algorithms in a frenzy, yo. I'll be looking forward to that for sure.
Please like and subscribe for all the up-to-date content. We've been slinging shows left and right, slinging content left and right. Please don't miss anything. If you do, like, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a question, something you may want to answer, something you may have. All ideas are great ideas. Nothing's a dumb question.